Good morning. This is Dr. James Weldon, Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this personal story and adventure of my autobiography and my years seeking the understanding and experience of the enlightened mind. This week, we've had a couple of delays, and I've had lots of time to think about this particular segment, this episode 14 of my second book of The Rise of the World Teacher and Resolving Past Karma. And in some ways, this particular segment is one of the most difficult segments to explain in terms of the experiences that I'm passing through. It's a summary of many different threads in my life. And all of this, individual postings are available on my Facebook page. And I've separated the two books of my life before being involved with the Art of Living Foundation and reconnecting with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, because the story of that relationship is absolutely unique. You know, honestly, as far as I know, nobody has tried to do what I'm doing here before. There have been great stories about yogis and the Puranas and the different things they pass through in the sacred scripture. Certainly, there's never been anyone in the West who's really tried to clarify what are the stages and steps to developing higher states of consciousness, to bring it down to something that's very practical. And essentially, all of this was written because I needed to, in a certain sense, get it out of my system. I passed through so many very unusual things in my life. And the segment we're going to discuss today is really a pivotal point for many different things and an explanation of many things that I passed through. You know, our life is a huge mystery. You know, where we come from and where we go and what's really happening here in our life. And if these things that are talked about by the great spiritual traditions of the world are really possible to have in our life, you know, we're like giant icebergs that we only see 1%, and the backstory is hidden. And this, in a small way, is an attempt to explain my individual backstory. In doing so, the events and the circumstances of my life are really not so important. But what's important is that there is a way and a path to achieve that higher state of consciousness, and what of the things that might happen on the way. You know, India is a tremendously great country, and there have been many great seers over the ages who've tried to explain that deeper knowledge. This is really the first time that we've had the ability to have, you know, a worldwide broadcast. I was really surprised last week. I started this segment and there was no video at all. And there was still, you know, about 60, 70 people who watched the entire video up until the end that I turned it off, and I was right at the crucial point. It's amazing how some of things have happened. I've had a chance to think a little bit more about this. And, you know, if it doesn't all completely make sense, have a little patience with me and yourself. I would encourage you to go back to listen to some of the earlier episodes here, if possible, all the way back to the beginning. But what has happened here is that during my first and second trips to India, I had a chance to begin to try to verify some of the experiences that I had. And through some of the ancient seniors in the past, and the founder of the Art of Living, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, sent me to meet with a descendant of Shukadeva. Shukadeva is one of the spiritual teachers in the tradition many thousands of years back. And Shukadeva, being a individual with very high consciousness, he was actually teaching a class in developing all-knowingness. And his group of students, obviously they were very advanced students at that time, would look into the intuitive awareness, the pragya awareness, and predict in that state individuals that might meet his descendants down the road. I know this sounds really incredible, but it's quite true. And would write down details of their lives that might be useful in the future when they met with some of his descendants in the future. This is thousands of years before the event happened. Anyway, and by the way, this particular individual, Ganjur, was the same individual that Sri Sri's father, Pittaji, went to learn about him, and also had said some very interesting things about Sri Sri when he was young, that he'd become a huge world teacher and so forth. When I did my original reading, some of the things that I experienced with my past incarnation apparently in Tibet were verified, and the teachers I was going to be with in this life, and some of the obstacles. I also talked about this, asked about this book, and he said someday it would be, this is the second book in a series on my autobiography, The Rise of the World Teacher. And one of the things that had been predicted at that time, one of the things he said at that time is that nobody was more surprised than me. I actually didn't believe it at the time. He said that in an earlier life I had attained God consciousness, but it had a curse laid on me from that, in that life, that hid my higher consciousness. And I had a very good friend of mine, Yogi Amrit Desai, who went through some difficult times, who Sri Sri, by the way, calls Gurudev also. He's a very high being. And it turned out we had some unresolved karma. And it was around this prediction. And the gist of that story was that I fell in love with his daughter in this earlier time, and we eloped. And there was in anger, there was a curse placed on me. There was a mutual one, apparently, that I did back. And again, I didn't believe that this was true. But when I first met with Amrit Desai, I felt tremendous pain, and I shared what I'd been through. And every time I met with him, a huge pain was coming up with me. And so the next day after that, I think it was the fourth or fifth time I visited him, this memory of this past situation, this karma, unveiled. And the point is that our lives are beautifully complex, and the drama of our lives. And that such events, we've all done many things, good and bad, wonderful and terrible. And such events, for safety's sake, are actually hidden away from us. And certainly this was hidden away from me until I was ready. And the last segment talks more about it. So, oops, the camera, okay. And so, know that the past is always, kind of hidden, with few exceptions, until we are prepared. And, what we attained in the past spiritually can't be lost, but it can be hidden. Isn't that really what happens when we're born in this world? And even a spiritual master who returns to this world apparently their enlightenment can be hidden for a while. And then at a certain time it comes out. You know, at that time when I was meeting with him, every fiber of my being reminded me of apparently the pain of my involvement in what had happened with him. And if you don't know the story, he was head of a very large ashram retreat in Kripalu, and that there was some kind of scandal that occurred, and he left that. And you know, for every event in this universe, you can really understand that there are uncountable intersecting forces that play into that are really difficult to see. And even Sri Sri has told me a number of times that the karma in the past is really unfathomable. Even with me remembering this past life, you need to understand there's actually another one before that that created that karma of that situation, and apparently resulted in this binding of my insight, the loss of an attainment. And you know, you have to wonder about that. So layer after layer of karma continues and drives us to different events and circumstances in our lives until we realize that we're ultimately beyond all action. And all I really knew was that Amrit had created this beautiful place for spiritual growth, and it had lost it for some reason. And apparently I was somehow involved. And Sri Sri said to me, again, if you don't know Amrit, he was really responsible for bringing yoga to the West. I consider him the father of yoga and asanas, and in the West. And thousands of teachers learned from him. And when we met together, he said, one can only wonder about it, why it was lost to him. And having realized that I now had a possible part in this drama, I decided to make a second trip to Amrit in Florida to see what possibly could be done. Because I promised myself at that time that I would do the best that I could to set things right, if possible. Just like if you've wronged somebody, you know, try to make amends if you can. And so many bindings in my life, karmas, had been released this year. Had gone through a tremendous number of things. You know, earlier in my life, I'd met, you know, innocently with the Dalai Lama, accidentally, and talked about some things that I'd been through. And now I had received another crucial insight about an unknown karma apparently holding me back, apparently for many years. And I was wondering, what could I do about it? So this enters this chapter here, which is entitled, "And Finally Letting Go." And the poem at the beginning of this goes this way. We have two abilities, holding on and letting go. And we have really learned holding on and grasping everything so well. It's really all that we do. But letting go takes practice, apparently lifetimes of practice. But when we really learn it, and this also means letting go and coming into the self. When we really learn it, when we really learn that lesson, ultimately then we're complete. It's not something that can be done just in the mind. And so just before going back to Florida, I had a chance for 2 days to see Sri Sri on a short visit in California. You know, even though financially we were really tight, but spending the money for the plane fare was a stretch. but I decided to go anywhere. Anyway, when I arrive, it seems it's impossible to meet with him. We're in the hall, and I walk across the hall, and he turns the other direction. No matter what I do, I can't seem, and it's normally quite easy for me, or it has been many times when it's, and perhaps we don't talk because I'm actually embarrassed again with all my experiences to even say that things are difficult for me. And what I learn immediately is that most of my friends are going through the same thing at the same time. In a group meeting, Sri Sri speaks directly to the point about this. And he says, without us even asking about it, he says, oh, many people are going through hard times now, huh? Look at the country. Look at the world. He says, don't blame yourself. It's just the times. Then he mentions actually this cycle of Saturn, which I had been passing through. It's about a year at that time. And he said, even gurus pass through this. Amazing. He says that he has been feeling this difficult time too. And so after that encouragement, a week later, I'm off to Florida to meet with this very dear friend, Amrit, Guru Amrit, with the hope that in my heart that somehow I can make this karma knot, apparently, that still holds me back. I can do something about it that affects us. And as I arrive in his ashram, I walk about this facility. If you ever get a chance to visit there, please go there. It's near the Ocala National Forest in Florida. And I've been there many times. And so I was waiting for our meeting. And the emotional regret that I'm feeling is so severe. Honestly, the visceral pain that I'm feeling is so strong, I actually feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. The pain is that it's chest deep. And the pain and these memories that are flooding through my mind are so strong. I actually had never experienced pain like this before. And I remembered back, when was the last time I had such pain? And I remembered a childhood event, one of the more physical painful events. When I was 13 years old, I was playing in the garage in my house, and hanging on the wall and the tools was a huge 10 to 15 pound crowbar. And I walked by and the crowbar fell off the wall. It's about 3 or 4 feet, and it falls down high up, and the pointed end lands squarely on the top of my big toe. I mean, whack, crushing my toe against the cement floor. And comparing that experience with the feeling and the pain that I'm of the anticipation of this meeting is actually more intense than the pain of that childhood memory. Just to give you a perspective. I remembered another incident of waking after I had surgery. When I was a child, I had my arm broken, and I didn't know they were going to do surgery. And I woke up, and there was an 8-inch scar still there on my arm where they implanted a steel plate because of a broken arm after a football accident in high school. The pain that I'm feeling walking about Amrit's ashram is greater than that. So Amrit and I finally meet in a setting in his beautiful house there where I'm staying. And I have everything prepared. In the event, Amrit agrees to my request to mutually release each other. I don't know if such a release from an apparent spiritual curse, mutual, is possible. But I decide I'm going to do this anyway. And so my plan is to share my memory of this past life with him, what I've experienced, and then have Amrit join me in an offering to our common spiritual tradition to release us through a Sanskrit ceremony called a Guru Puja, which many of you know that, and many of you actually have learned this. And this is the same ceremony that is completed prior to initiating someone into meditation and giving them their personal instruction, their personal mantra for meditation. You know, and it seems appropriate to me to do the Guru Puja, as learning meditation for me was one of the greatest events of my life. For me, it may be possible that through the release of this curse, I'm just wondering, the spiritual attainment that has been achieved, in my case, supposedly hidden away, might return again. And so with tears in my eyes, I share with Amrit my memories of this past life and experience with him, my parent experience with him. And what I believe was my part in creating the karmic pattern that resulted apparently in the loss of his position at Kripalu. You see, stopping here for a second, so rarely the events in our life are caused by the immediate circumstances. So rarely. We think that this is the cause of our unhappiness, some person, some circumstance. In our, 10 minutes ago, a half an hour ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, very, very rarely, there's always a deeper story. And I said to him, these are the experiences and memories that have come to me. And Amrit, you've told me, Guru, Amrit, you've told me in the past that my visions and experiences were true. And I cannot deny these experiences either. Since coming to the ashram last night, the pain has been unbearable. And I felt it at times, it was like having a heart attack. And I said, please forgive me for any thoughts, deeds, or actions in anything that I may have said out of ignorance, out of foolishness, out of ignorance. Perhaps we both have said and done things that we did not intend. And I said, let us each release this curse and be done with it. I have learned from this memory to be very careful about what I do and say. At a certain state, as the truth rises within us, our words gain the ability to make themselves fruitful. Sri Sri Ravi Shankar told me that one of the first such great abilities is the ability to bless and also the ability to curse. So Amrit then said, yes, Yogadhi, I will release you. So with these words, I began the short Guru Puja in Sanskrit to break the curse. What can I do? In the beginning of the puja starts with a promise. And it translates as whether you are pure or impure, whether you are enlightened or ignorant, whoever brings their awareness to the enlightened mind, this is my translation a little bit, whoever brings their awareness to the enlightened mind, that being is assured of becoming pure and enlightened. Then we begin singing the names of the masters of the holy tradition. Because although that infinity is everywhere, and we and we may achieve many things on our own, our highest truth is only seen and lived fully by the grace of the enlightened master in the tradition. And this is really, in a lot of ways, the secret here of this journey to the enlightened mind. If you've had a chance to hear my earlier story, this is the secret. The highest spiritual achievement attainments are only given away freely in a moment of love. So after Aman and I complete this, we bow to those masters and then to each other, and then we embrace. And I know in that moment that it is done. The grace has freed us all, freed us both. And I can barely move because the intensity of the energy, a process had already begun even before we meet. Just as Amrit had stepped into the room prior to doing the puja, he sees me having a kundalini experience like a volcano flowing through my body. This morning, the experience was especially strong. Through my hands, it's like a sunrise coming out, and all over. Rarely has anyone seen this kind of display with me, as the energy usually selects a time when I'm alone, thank God. And I wonder, perhaps this show of spiritual power was to bind us together in a deeper way. As the moment Amrit sees this experience in his strength, he asked me about it. This Shakti continued all throughout our meeting and afterward. Amrit then says, this energy I see how my master blessed me when I was given the gift of bestowing the grace. And he asked, how long has this been happening to you? And I answered, this has been going on for some years, but lately it no longer has anything to do with any spiritual practice, day or night, asleep or awake. Such energy has its own cycle. It comes and it goes like the sun from behind the clouds at any moment on its own. And upon my arrival at your ashram, it began again, along with those moments of pain that I described. This morning the sun rose and I meditated with the sun coming up on your deck overlooking the lake. And it came again and it has not gone. And so we bow and hug again. And then Amrit leaves for other meetings and I continue to meditate. And what is happening at this point cannot even be called meditation. For there's nothing to do or practice. I do not even have a choice. At this moment, I do not even exist as a life separate from the universe. As I sit in my room in Amrit's home, it's like the sun outside is now rising in the sky within me. The rays, the light, the grace, the love, the infinity are all there, searing out from my heart and my being, my mind and hands in all directions. And I dissolve in this energy and become nothing and everything. Take a break here. And I'm saying, this is it. This is it. Everything and nothing. Everything and nothing. That is what we are. And it goes on forever. No time, all time, for any time, forever. Outside the room where I'm staying, in every direction, there are oak trees bearing thousands of acorns. And after minutes or hours, I return to awareness from that nothing and everything consciousness. Then I begin to feel and see it all those acorns waiting to fall from all those trees, within me and all around me, in every direction, at the same time. All of this I know in that moment. You know, this entire universe is happening within me. There's no outside. I ruminate on this insight sitting there, and it comes again and again, over and over. Each moment, I become nothing and everything. And then an acorn falls outside, plop, and I can hear it hitting the ground, see it in this consciousness. Plop, another one on this side, plop on another one on this side. And the inside comes again. As the force of gravity is drawing them to the ground, I see that this attraction is only the divine love drawing them to their fulfillment as they fall. I see every acorn in that instant in interval. And there are tens of thousands of them on all of these trees in all directions. And they're all waiting on numberless trees for that magical moment when the love of Mother Divine and the earth will finally draw them to her bosom. And I'm in it all the acorns, the trees, the earth, and the love that holds them all together. This energy is the divine life swirling through us all. It is bliss moving forward in all directions. All this life and the life in each acorn is waiting patiently for its moment to become complete. All this love comes from me, the big self, okay? From the sun, from the universe, from everything, and from nothing. And I listen to one acorn fall, and I know its journey completely. Then dozens of acorns, they're going whack, they're falling in the next moment. And I see them all around me, fully and completely, wholly. And I realize in that instant that this is the time, apparently, for my completion. As literally enlightenment is falling from the sky. You know, my dear friends, this is it. This is it. Enlightenment is falling from the skies. In each falling acorn, there is living knowledge coming down from heavens. This is your life. This is you are one of these too. This is what we are. Full, complete knowledge and all the love of the universe on its mysterious journey of realizing itself. And as I'm sitting there in this room, 6 feet from the door, literally with my eyes closed, meditating, feeling all of this emotion, all of this love, I see a single acorn fall from a tree about 15 feet away from my door. And somehow it magically bounces on the ground and then moves as if it's alive, diagonally up the 2 steps across the sidewalk with several more bounces. It continues to bounce, and somehow it comes into the bedroom, makes a right turn, and then a left turn, and then with a final roll, it comes to rest, landing right in front of me on the floor. Right in front of me, of my feet. And in that state of everything and nothing, I'm shocked. I can't even think that this is not, it's not possible. Because in that moment, I see and know that anything and everything is possible. And so with my eyes closed, seeing this, seeing it all, every moment, knowing the full journey of that tiny acorn, as I see it land with my eyes barely open, I reach down and I pick up the acorn in my right hand and I look at it. And then the most beautiful, unbelievable knowledge begins unfolding. Listen, listen. This is truth. I picked up the acorn, and then as I sit looking at this beautiful tiny life in my hand, a sound, a vibration, a mantra comes up in my mind. I have no idea what the vibration of this mantra means. I just hear it. And I feel it. And that word is Santosha. And as the vibration of that sound resonates in my heart and mind, it begins to unfold within my consciousness, just like a tiny seed, the tiny seed in my hand might sprout someday and grow into a mighty tree. And as I watch in amazement, the different aspects, the different divine qualities, if you will, of that mantra begin to unfold, just like a lotus flower opening. And I remember being told by Maharishi many years ago that Sanskrit is like no other language. He said that the vibration, the sounds of this language are full of wisdom and knowledge. One of the reasons when we are initiated, we take a Sanskrit mantra and use those vibrations deep within us is that they contain in seed form the reality and all the wonderful characteristics of the enlightened mind. One of the ways that I've come to understand this is that our consciousness, when it focuses, becomes coherent, and the subtle channels of energy in the heart and mind really become open. Our consciousness becomes like a laser beam. And normally our consciousness is weak and unfocused all over in the and we have millions of thoughts, impressions, desires, all swirling around us through our minds. And our typical awareness is like an incoherent light all about us. However, when all those energies become focused and flow freely within us, the practice, then a whole series of hidden levels of creation become known. This is the unknown multidimensional universe all about us. And the secret journey that I passed through had apparently brought me to the point of seeing the reality of these teachings as literally as I now saw the acorn in the palm of my hands. At this point, 36 years of practice, breathing, meditation, chanting, study, doing some seva, self-service, to the knowledge had cleared my vision. And Santosha vibrates through every pore of my being. As I watch the resonance unfold, I'm seeing the character, the effect of vibration. Every letter is different. You know, this is not just a sound, it's a living reality within the divine consciousness. And I see how it unfolds. It doesn't matter if this isn't clear to you. This is what was happening within me. And the point of this, so what? Flashy experience, so what? The point is that reality also lives within you. And without comparing, understand that you are like that wonderful, precious little acorn. And with grace and knowledge and love, the time is coming. And I'm telling you, there's a huge time coming in this world. And the fulfillment of these great masters for me it's happening now in the world. That's what's happening now. So the one part of this sound, the sound of Santosha, is the rising of the life force. And the second part, the is the wholeness of infinity. And this energy as it arrives causes energy to flow progressively through all the 128,000 subtle channels in the body, if they're open. And at the end, the sound is the frozen stillness of infinity. When we're just absolutely frozen in that still space within us. And then out of these forces together comes the tiniest vibration of life. The H, the mantra becomes limitless wonder. This whole sound finally comes up into the highest place of the crown chakra, and that Kundalini rises again. and the completed enlightening mind. Relaxing and letting go. Ah. My dear friends, there is so much more that is possible. It's not possible to describe. However, I know that the possibilities of the knowledge go in all directions forever. Anything is possible. For me, over 36 years since I first began to meditate. In 1971, I was told about a level of reality where that subtle awareness, when I learned meditation, can be known. By direct experience, it's possible. When the seer and the process of knowing then become one, then the door of knowingness opens. Now I know this reality is true. And this place, it appears, is the place of the seers, of the rishis, of truth, where the Veda, the wisdom of pure knowledge, is lived. And this is a little doorway in my consciousness at that moment. Without a doubt, like a lightning bolt of understanding. How amazing is it that even as I wrote these words, I just received a message at the time that I wrote this about the Maharishi, the great Rishi, who first explained this level of reality to me. The Maharishi now, in his just this day that this happened, just this day that this happened to me, can you believe it? Entered Mahasamadhi. This day that this event, this experience happened, that day. And he passed into the great infinity beyond. I've been telling my friends for the past week that this passing was imminent. This was at that time. My dear friends, this was at that moment. What can I say? Though it has been many years than we've last met physically in 1976, overlooking Lucerne in Switzerland, Maharishi's presence has always been so close. How remarkable that I'm stewarding one of his closest friends. Apparently, Swami Muktananda, in his soul's return to this world to teach again. This is unbelievable. You know, my story is a play with 3 acts, whose players include 3 great, unbelievable saints of our age. In Act 2, you know, I matured like this acorn in my hand. From Maharishi to Siddha Yoga Guru Chitmalasananda, because Muktananda had passed. And then that tradition also sent me to Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, whose sun of realization now shines so brightly, honestly. for tens of millions of people around the globe. Now that Maharishi's gone, you might ask, where do such beings go after they leave this physical world? The easy answer for this is that they go nowhere because they're already everywhere. But the deeper truth is that they exist eternally in the subtlest body and a form, I believe, on the finest level of creation that I was shown and taken to many years ago. I've tried to share my experience of this level of reality so that many can find their way home to this place, opening that door. Can I dare say that those living on this level of reality can find that it's possible to find these great beings at any moment? Yes. Because this is how it is. And what I've shared here is the truth. Satyam, Satyam, Satyam. May the truth be spoken here. Only the truth. So as I left Amrit's ashram that day, I know now that this is a new beginning for me. In a lot of ways, the sharing for me is a coming out. I've seen the truth of this whole new dimension of life, and something has come up within me. Santosha. This is a teaching and somehow a practice, that I'll only understand as it unfolds with me over time. And Sri Sri had told me that I would come into a new sadhana practice after 12 years. So that's happened. Of course, a lot of time has passed since then. So I leave that beautiful place, taking that acorn so mysteriously, I still held onto it in my room when I left Amrit's ashram in Florida. And for me, it represents everything that happened to me in Florida and the knowledge that we are all like that tiny acorn. We live in this small body, on this small planet, in this small galaxy, never realizing that the creation that gave rise to us has much bigger plans for us. We're all part of a greater evolution, and oneness with enlightened consciousness is our destiny. And it's greater than we can ever possibly imagine. Apparently my life is an example of that our common life contains the ability to experience and live all life within it. And my prayer on leaving was to let that acorn of truth unfold in many now. And I pray, let this be the time for that realization for many. So, I know there's been a lot to take care of. I understand. And if it doesn't all make sense, don't worry. The reality is there within you, regardless of known or unknown, it exists. And it's the next natural state of evolution. The experiences that I pass through, they don't matter. They're gone. So what? But if they can be an inspiration of the possibilities, if they can be an opening of a doorway for many, let that be. So thank you for taking the time with me today. And I appreciate you listening to, this is just my personal story, an autobiography of Yogadhi. and my journey with these great, unbelievable beings that are now in the world. You have to wonder if that is coming, how many more are here? What's their backstory? Who were they? There's so much more at this point I don't even know about myself. And it gradually unfolds over time. A lot of years have passed since this experience. So let's take a short break, take a deep breath, and return again momentarily for episode 15 on the rise of the first world teacher. I don't say these words lightly. In my second book, and I'm so glad now that this karma has been resolved. What can we say? These same words. This is a saying, may that divine consciousness rise in you. When we say this, it's a blessing. And my example should be an example. Be a little careful about your words now. Your words are beginning to have the ability to make themselves fruitful. And be patient in your anger. It's okay to have it. Don't resist it. All these emotions are absolutely necessary. Anger, there's a time for everything. But let's be liberal in blessing. And you don't need to make it dramatic. You don't have to go, oh, now I'm healing, now I'm blessing. You can be very quiet. Bless everybody, bless this world, bless everything that has brought us in, our enemies, our friends, all the stages of our life. Because ultimately we'll be so grateful of all the difficulties and the good things that happen in your life, that they propel you to this moment, this time, this understanding, this reality, which is not so far away, I'm telling you. This state of consciousness is the next natural state of evolution. And it just so happens that there are going to be many, many people coming into this. I'll talk about that later, what I was told. How many? There will be so many. So, thank you for joining me today. This is Dr. James Weldon, speaking Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina. Our beautiful community here that is dedicated, and it's my prayer and hope that someday this place here will be like a Rishikesh, will be like the tremendously great spiritual centers in the Himalayas and around India and all around that whole region, which have provided a very powerful spiritual center. We're on the oldest mountain range in the world here, right here. This is a very, very special place. So thank you. Namaste. Talk to you again shortly.